Down the line, I guess right to left across your radio dial, we have Ariana Rodriguez-Gittler, who is the digital producer at Pew. We have Tanya Sachinsky from the Washington Post, newsletter editor there, and Andrea Comont, who is the digital engagement manager also at Pew. We tried to break it up so we don't have too much of Pew in one place. We know there's a lot of Pew folks out there in the room too, so try to break it up a little bit. Thrilled to be here. We're going to talk today about email, but more specifically, using email courses to activate your archives, to engage your readers, and achieve a lot of the goals that so many of us want to achieve in our newsrooms. So let's get into it. We'll talk a little about and this, for what it's worth, is a little different panel than most, not just a kind of a back and forth, but we have a bunch of slides. Wanted this to be interactive and really showcase what we're doing, because with email courses, it's a little different than some of the normal day-to-day newsletter things that a lot of us are used to and have tried. So really wanted to make sure everyone gets kind of the opportunity here and the power of it. So let's get into it. Little primer first. What is an email course? An email course is an opportunity to teach a reader a skill, a habit, a trick, give them a new lesson to learn, and do so in a pretty interesting way. With an email course, you're using email automation. So instead of a day-to-day sort of newsletter, you're actually setting up a series of emails in advance that trigger based when a reader signs up for your newsletter or takes some sort of action if they're already in your email program. And then what happens next is those emails are sent out at a regular sort of interval. You can sign up today, tomorrow, a couple of years from now, and get those series of newsletters. Now, this isn't a regular recurring email newsletter. We're not going to talk about those types of campaigns today. It's not a pop-up or limited run newsletter. Some of you might be familiar with stuff like the Post did an awesome Olympics newsletter. At the New Yorker, we did a midterms newsletter that was just for a couple weeks. This isn't one of those. This is actually an automated product that's designed to live on and be fairly evergreen. And it's also not an onboarding email. It's not a CRM series. A little different. This is editorially focused. So we have some amazing panelists here today who have done awesome things already with automated emails, with courses. Wanted to walk you through some of the awesome things we've done and how you out there can take advantage of this kind of interesting feature in your email platform. So let's get into it. First up, actually, I wanted to start, Andrea, tell us a little bit about kind of how you first found out about email courses and why you decided to bring one to Pew.
Sure. So I run social media and newsletters at the Pew Research Center, and I actually took a Buffer course that was kind of like one of these CRM courses called 25 Expert Social Media Growth Strategies. And so I got an email from Buffer every day over the course of 25 days, and then at the end I got this nice little congratulations, you're an all-star certificate. And I thought maybe we could apply this to our own content. And so I kind of pitched the idea around at the center, and I think that this slide illustrates like really what the challenge is. We've been studying immigration since 2002. We have a huge body of work and a lot of knowledge on this topic. And but if you come to our website, you have no sense of where to begin. And so we wanted to kind of knit all of that together into a bigger product. Did you want to add anything to that, Ariana?
Yeah. So, Dan, if you can go to the next slide.
Yeah.
So this is a kind of an example of what the courses actually look like, and you can see that it's kind of formatted in maybe a different way than a typical newsletter. So while the challenge was how do we make this information kind of digestible when we have so much, we also had to think about things like the format and the design. We'll get into some of that as well, but it kind of all came together as a package. It wasn't just let's write this thing in a bubble and not think about where it's going to go, but it was very much created thinking about email, where people read that mostly on their phones, things like that as we built it.
And with something like this, just so everyone understands, what is your email platform? What did you build these in?
Yeah, we use MailChimp, but I'm pretty sure most email platforms have the ability to use automation, so it's really just using what you're comfortable with and setting it up in the way that works for you.
So for this, just a brief outline, how many days is this email course? What kind of things do you get over the course of those days?
Yeah, so you sign up and you're immediately sent a welcome email, and then about an hour later you get the first lesson. We actually had a lot of discussion about how often we should be sending these lessons, and we settled on every other day. which people seem to like. We actually conducted a survey at the end of the series and asked people how did the frequency feel, and everybody overwhelmingly, I think people said that they liked it. So there are 5 lessons total, all sort of like different broad topics, and then at the end you get a congratulatory certificate, and I think that's the third email on the side over there. And we really thought a lot about like how it looks on mobile. We really wanted to kind of break up the content with nice big headers and subheaders. Pretty restrained use of graphics. I mean, if you guys have read a Pew Research Center report, you know that we love graphics. We have tons and tons of charts, and we actually really had to like hold back a little bit when we were creating these products. Yeah.
Amazing. All right, Tanya, can you tell everyone a little about what you guys did with Veraciously?
Yeah, so Veraciously is a vertical that we launched a little bit more than a year ago, and our challenge with launching that was finding a newsletter product that fit the mission of the vertical, which was teaching novice cooks how to feel more confident in their kitchens. So the series format actually fits that perfectly because we not only needed to provide people with recipes that were cookable and approachable, but we needed to deliver that to people in a very approachable format, something that was easy to consume, food pun intended, and really take them on a journey of becoming a better cook and feeling confident about it. So there are 3 that we've launched so far, and we're actually launching a 4th one next Friday. The first one that you'll see is called Zero to Dinner Party. That was a series targeted to people who want to not only learn how to cook, but learn how to cook for their friends. So it's a crash course in approachable entertaining, which is a stuffy word, so we really wanted to keep it low key, make it seem fun, have a quick dinner party with your friends. It's very casual.
Yeah.
And then the middle one is Meal Plan of Action, which I personally authored. And it is for the person who wants to meal plan, meal prep in a way that is not just your 20 Pinterest Tupperwares that all look exactly the same, baked chicken, green beans, all that jazz. This is a way to cook that leads into other meals. So that was a really fun one to do. And then lastly, we launched back in June Plant Powered, which is for people who want to eat more plants, more plant-forward cooking, partially plant-based, partially vegetarian. But all 3 of those, what they have in common is that they're 12-week series. You'll get 1 a week for 12 weeks, and you'll get a handful between 1 to 3 recipes in each one, depending on the product. And we teach you a couple of skills at the beginning, then you get an approachable recipe, and we then encourage people to share and join the community of people that are cooking in this fashion.
So with something like this, approachable recipe is a really good phrase to use.
Yes.
I know we did some of these at BuzzFeed, and we found sometimes that it was almost too much for readers. How do you decide what the right balance is in terms of giving content via email?
Totally. So a great way to think about that is think about like what people would want in their inbox. You wouldn't necessarily want like 5 full-length recipes in a newsletter. That's extremely not approachable. So depending on the product, Zero to Dinner Party usually had maybe 1 or 2. So there was really like a lesson in a style or a technique of cooking, and then 1 recipe that was part of a broader menu, hence the like 12 weeks. And then for Plant Powered, it's 2 recipes because you really want to be able to scan. The recipe should be short. You want to see it within probably like 1 to 2 scrolls. And then Meal Plan of Action was 3, which is definitely like max capacity. If we want to get really technical, we can talk about the clipping problems with that. But we really wanted to have something compact enough that it made sense that you got the entire recipe in your inbox. You didn't have to click through to a link. You didn't have to surf through our recipe database. It was all there for you to find in your Gmail, your Outlook, or whatever when you're cooking, and just pull it up very easily.
When you're planning these out, this idea of kind of like a frictionless experience, that it's right there in your inbox, how important was that on us, the Pew team? Like, how important was that when you were thinking about the immigration series?
Yeah, I would say it's really important. I mean, we definitely would include links out to more information, but we really felt strongly that people should have a complete experience, like really be able to have a better understanding of the topic that we were addressing in that email within the email without having to come back to the website and read more.
Yeah, I mean, we formatted the immigration course to start as the title of each email was a question, and then each subhead answered that. So we wanted to make sure that if you were wondering, who are immigrants in the U.S., you would know that in that one email, or who are legal immigrants in the U.S., you would know that in that one email. So again, we would link to our resources, since that's the reason why we made it, is that we have so much information, but we didn't want you to feel like you had to go to those things to fully understand what we were talking about.
Awesome. I'm going to show 2 examples of mine. One from BuzzFeed, or actually a couple different from BuzzFeed. We did a bunch of these courses back in 2014, 2015, and 2016 when I was there, really focused on trying to figure out how to adapt some of the challenges and work we were already doing on BuzzFeed and adapt it for email, like everyone said. There's opportunities to deliver really interesting actions. Ours were a lot like the Washington Post, where they were trying to figure out how do we give someone content every single day or every couple of days to deliver certain actions. So something like the 7-Day Better Skin Challenge on the left was a series of about 9 emails, actually, including a welcome and a closing email.
I need that.
Yeah. Yeah, that one was awesome. We did ones around better skin. We did ones around natural hair, fitness challenges that had coaches, and tried to think about how we can use all of these to encourage people to take an action, come back, and for readers too who were maybe a little skeptical about email, who were not thinking that newsletters was a way they wanted to get content from us. These were an opportunity to introduce our emails to readers and show that our newsletters were a little different. Our newsletters were actually really, really good, and to make an impact there. These were also great because you can translate these into other languages, and you can tap into markets that you might not otherwise go for. The one on the right, natural hair, was a great experiment as BuzzFeed was pushing into more content for people of color and women of color. The ones on the left, this was, I believe, Portuguese and French. The Portuguese audience really loved Better Skin. The French audience, not so much.
And when we talked about this before, I think you said that the translating these helped you test, gauge interest in these other audiences.
It was something that was really interesting. We launched these before we actually launched newsletters, original kind of regular daily or weekly newsletters in these other languages, just to see what kind of things would work and which markets we wanted to focus on. Mm-hmm. So we discovered, for instance, when we launched one of these in Germany, the response wasn't that good. We did another one, response wasn't that great, so we didn't focus on Germany. But in Brazil, they responded so well to these newsletters that we ended up launching a weekly health and beauty newsletter there. I'm not going to try to pronounce it in Portuguese. I tried it last week, and it just didn't go well. At The New Yorker, we also tried to utilize our archives through automated products. This is still very much in progress and in the works. This is something where they're continuing to test now. But this is one where it's not actually a sign up on the site. You engage with The New Yorker a certain amount over email. You're incredibly, incredibly engaged. Well, we want to trigger this automated series to help you go even deeper into The New Yorker's archives and showcase some of our best performing pieces of content. No. There we go. All right, let's talk a little about why it works, what's in it for publishers, and how you measure success with these types of products, because they are a little different from your day-to-day newsletters. So I want to go down the line. Andrea, do you want to talk a little bit about you talked a little about mobile-friendly, you talked a little about, about actions. What made these successful for readers from your perspective?
I think we felt like there was a big demand for quality information about this topic and for it to be presented in a way that is really easily consumable and understandable. And so I think that us doing the hard work of distilling all of the information that we have about this into a product that is, easily readable or even scannable in just a couple minutes time, and then just giving that out in bite-sized pieces over the course of about 2 weeks was a real service to readers. We got a ton of really nice compliments from people who had subscribed. One woman told us that she was printing out the lessons and bringing them home and reading them to her family over lunch. So it was just really, really sweet things. A lot of appreciation.
That's amazing. And Tanya, because you oversee a lot of newsletters at the Post, we talk a lot about and think a lot about inbox fatigue. There are so many newsletters. Readers say nobody comes to us and says, my favorite part of the day is checking my inbox. So for something like this, how does that doing a short run course, how does that tap in and play in and improve the inbox experience for a reader?
Totally. One of the biggest responses and reader feedback that our team gets is that I really like this idea, but my inbox is a nightmare. I don't want anything else. And so products like this are an easy sell because you can tell people that we're stopping by and then we're going to peace out and you won't see us again, except for the potential that we might market you another shorter version of the newsletter or a newsletter. But it lessens that inbox fatigue that people are feeling, that I think we all are feeling, because you're able to tell people it starts, you'll enjoy it, and then it ends. And I think that the sign-up process also needs to be frictionless to kind of tell people, you don't have to do a lot of work to get into this, we'll do the work for you.
Yeah. And the ends part of it is so crucial.
important.
It's so important.
Yeah.
I mean, we really want people to feel like they got something out of this from us. We want to empower our readers. For this series, we want to empower them to be better cooks, to feel more confident. But we want people to walk away with this idea that they learned something really valuable from the post, and that we helped them along whatever journey they're trying to get to. And so I think the conclusion of each of these emails is very much centered at the point where you have learned something. There's like this is cheesy, but there's like a valuable lesson to take away from them. They're all I think all of our series have very valuable lessons that you can leave with, and you can apply them to other aspects of your life. The email stays in your inbox for 8 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever, but you'll be able to take that experience into the real world with you.
So something that I was so fascinated about with the Pew course, when we did these at BuzzFeed, it would be something like the 21-day better butt and core challenge. All right, there's a very specific end goal there, which is having a great butt. Very straightforward. People are shooting for something. You know who you are and what you're trying to get out of it. But you guys tackled something, Ariana, on the newsy side of things. So were you concerned early on about whether or not, were you worried, or were you sure about whether or not people were going to get at the end of it like, oh, I know what I'm trying to achieve with this and why something like this might be for me?
Yeah, I mean, we certainly went into it thinking that the goal that someone might have is to learn more, and that's not maybe as exciting as having a nice butt or nice skin, but that's something that you're going into it thinking, and that's kind of how we marketed it and how we wrote it is, we had these questions that you maybe were thinking yourself, or someone had asked you, or maybe that came up in a conversation, but you didn't actually know how to answer it, and I think that goes back to the format that we use so that we could say, you have this question, here's what we know about it, and now you've learned something. We did talk about, and it's something we're thinking about for future courses, is like what else can we put at the end that makes it a little bit more like a tangible something. So we had a social media card that you could share at the end to say that you'd done it. We're considering quizzes in the future, other things to like, even though you've learned, how do you show that? Be like showing stuff on social media and in person. So like, how can we give users that little extra piece, even though maybe they did learn something and they feel better about themselves, or they know more about a topic, but also they can show it off.
Awesome.
That clicker.
We'll get there. We'll get there together.
Oh no.
There you go.
Oh, nope. There we go. For publishers, a couple things to tackle here. One, it really does an amazing job of building your brand, and it gives you an opportunity to learn and test. I mean, I mentioned at BuzzFeed, we tried throwing these newsletters out to certain markets to learn first. They're also great because you set them up, you run them for a certain number of days, and at the end you can just do the set it and forget it model. You can do the Ronco rotisserie, like you put them out, and at the end of it, you see I got one chuckle on Ronco rotisserie. And you can at the end of it kind of, just say like, all right, we set it up, it's done, it's working, but when done really, really well, you're actually going back, looking at the data and saying, all right, well, somewhere along the line, we may have lost people, maybe one of these emails did or didn't work, maybe we need to improve the messaging here. If the email course doesn't work at all, did we promote it in the right way? With these, I'm curious, as you all have launched a couple of these now, have you gone back and actually edited, made changes to them? How important was that?
Yeah, we have updated some of our research twice. One of the big numbers that we put out every year or two. I think you would know better than me.
Yeah.
How often is the...
We update our estimates on unauthorized immigrants probably around every 2 years. As we were writing the course, we knew that it was about to be updated, so we quickly had to update the course. And then our researchers updated their numbers even quicker than we were expecting, and so then we updated the course again. So we've now done it twice in the almost year that it's been live. And so it is important on a topic, even though it's evergreen, we wrote it in a way that's not so numbers heavy that every year it's going to be different. But we do recognize that people want the latest, so we wrote it in a way that we could identify those spots where we might have to go back in the future, and keep it up to date. We also made sure that we included text in each of the emails that said when it was last updated, so people feel like, these emails don't necessarily have a dateline because you are writing them in advance and they kind of live on forever. If we felt it was important to tell people, these numbers are from this time, or this is the last time that we looked at this email to update it.
And Tanya, in terms of audiences, the post has so many great newsletters, but did you find that people signed up for these who maybe hadn't signed up for newsletters before?
Oh, yes. With, at least for the newsletter that I authored, Meal Plan of Action, and one that we just recently launched, Plant Powered, we saw that almost a quarter of newsletter subscribers for that one were first-time post-newsletter subscribers. So we were bringing in new emails to the database. We were able to then target people with other products that they might like based on their interests in Meal Plan of Action and Plant Powered. And it really, these series really give you an opportunity to experiment in two ways. You experiment with the content and the format, but you also get to experiment in trying to target and service audiences that maybe your regular news coverage isn't best serving currently, or you're not targeting them in the best way. Maybe, the post doesn't have a much of a beauty beat, but maybe if we were interested in trying that out, we might go in with a newsletter series that is low lift, that is low stakes in some respects, and be able to experiment on whether or not that's something we want to put more resources toward. So I think we definitely were able to gauge that with food, and the success of that is driving our doubling down on launching more of those, which is the next one we're launching next week.
And we actually had a very similar experience in terms of the new subscribers. I think about 7 in 10 of the emails of the folks who subscribed to the immigration series were new emails to us. So it definitely helped us broaden our audience.
It's amazing. Ariana and Andrea were kind enough to share some of their
Yes.
numbers, and so guys, take it
Yeah,
away.
we were happy to.
Yeah.
So the chart on the left here, the newsletter subscribers, that's just for sort of nonprofits overall. So typical open rates for nonprofits are about 1 in 4, 24% open. And you can see the chart on the right here shows the open rates by lesson. And so you can see that they're significantly higher than what you see for a typical newsletter. Click rates were lower, but that's really, as we said earlier, that's really not the goal. So we were kind of blown away by this. I don't know, Ariana, how you felt about it when we first saw
for sure. The engagement's great. Dan, if you don't mind going to the next slide.
Sure.
Speaking of that, what we noticed too is about that fatigue. Like, people were really engaged, so much so that we were sending them 7 emails total. 5 of them were what we call lessons of the series, and you could see that a lot of people were opening multiple emails. They didn't just read one and then throw it away. They were really wanting to really learn throughout the course, and we saw that in our engagement rates throughout.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to go back for one
Yeah,
sec to the last email had an unusually high click rate.
Yeah.
What happened there?
I think it was people sharing the
Social
card,
media
the social
card.
media card that we provided, and also actually it didn't
We
look
had a
closely.
survey as well
Yeah, the
that
survey.
we used in the last email. So we did get a good amount of responses that helps us figure out, because it was so new for us, did people like the frequency? Did they like the time of day, the amount of charts versus text, all of those kind of simple questions? We just wanted to get a sense of, did we do this right? Are people interested, but we need to make some changes? And we found that a lot of the choices we made are actually supported by people who are reading. We got tons of other feedback as well about things we could change. Particularly, people really did emphasize the desire for quizzes. I think it goes back to that learning and wanting to feel like you're being tested. But it was using that survey was a great way to not just put it out there, but actually learn and then be able to make changes in the future from.
We wanted to get in some best practices here and talk a little about some of the things that we learned that everyone can take away. So I'll kick it off here and say, in terms of content, in terms of framing and format, having some sort of champion or coach to guide you through the journey, you can do it in a really, really big way. This guy, Albert, who did a bunch of these at BuzzFeed, was awesome. And we would often compliment him with somebody who was on our staff. So Albert is a professional trainer. We would have people on our staff who were normal humans who would do the course alongside him. It would be featured in like the GIFs and the emails too, to make you feel like, all right, well, Albert can do this because look at his arms. But if a normal person on the BuzzFeed staff can do this too, so can you. And having those coaches to guide you through was really, really important.
We also used like a voice for ours. We used the director of research on global migration and demography, Mark Lopez, as kind of the voice that this course was coming from. So he was the person writing the welcome email and the congrats email. And we did actually get a lot of emails back that were written like, "Dear Mark, thank you, Mark." So I think it really helped people feel like they were connecting. And we did also phrase it that he isn't necessarily writing out the whole course because, you know, he contributed, but he didn't actually write all of it. So it was kind of more, he was telling everyone that his team had worked on this. And I think it was a good way for people to connect and feel like, you know, this information is not just coming down from wherever. It was coming from a team of researchers who were committed to this information.
Yeah, Tanya, can you talk a little too about how you think about getting someone to achieve something, to learn something, and all these different emails, and how that fit in with yours?
Yeah, so having written one of these myself, it was really important to feel like I was kind of over their shoulder in a sense, like walking them through this, both in the tone of the newsletter. It was very, I know I keep using the word approachable, but there's really no better way to describe it. Very approachable. Even in the recipe writing, it was very much like, put a little bit of this and that, then you're gonna take that over here, walk over here, do this, gonna shake this out. Very conversational, very laid back. It's supposed to be the antidote to very stuffy, like long recipe blog type deals. And we really wanted to make it feel fun. And so the format that you'll see in these emails complements that. You're gonna click around a little bit, you'll see a menu, you'll be able to flip through things. We wanted people to be able to take this with them, so I think there's a screenshot up there that shows a shopping list. I wanted it to be a really inbox exclusive, self-contained product, so we had a shopping list that you could just one click and save it to your phone. It was mobile compatible, and that really encourages people to take us on their journey with them, take us to the store with you, and then back to your kitchen.
Yeah, I'll mention too, there's a BuzzFeed example up there with the little yellow boxes. That was from the Spring Cleaning Challenge. And in that one, every single email had a section that was geared towards time-sensitive kind of action. So you have 1 minute today, you have 5 minutes, you have 15 minutes. Here's something you could do. So even if you were really busy that day, everyone had 1 minute that they could do something to clean their home and feel productive, useful, and like they could come back the next day. Well, I didn't have time for this today, but I'm gonna come back tomorrow and do a little better when I have more time. It builds a certain amount of all of these, build a certain amount of habit, and as you go through and you learn something new every day, you wanna come back and come for the next one. Everyone likes feeling a little smarter, everyone likes improving, self-improvement, and these are so great at building that habit and driving those kind of results. The other thing we mentioned too was the emails were all self-contained. It was this kind of frictionless experience. It's right there in your inbox. You don't have to click, you don't have to go anywhere else. It just really lessens the burden on the reader. It's right there for them. They can always come back and refer to it, or they can print it out and show it to their family over dinner. We haven't necessarily, no one's ever actually tried to say, like, print this email out and show it to your family. Maybe
we should.
Maybe a Thanksgiving guide this year.
I will say the printer-friendly thing is really important if you want people to take the lessons out of the inbox, because talk about learnings that we're applying kind of backwards. With the first couple of newsletters being totally self-contained and having several recipes in them, we did get a lot of feedback from people that was like, hey, I want to print this recipe out, but I print it out and it's like 8 pages and I don't know what to do. Please help me. And so with Plant Powered, and we're considering doing this back to the first 2 that we launched, each recipe has a link to the recipe database version of that recipe that is entirely like printer friendly, like formatted for printing. And it also contains nutrition information and things that are useful but wouldn't necessarily make the most sense to include in the newsletter.
We actually did that at BuzzFeed with it was the Couch to 5K program, where there was a PDF at the start that you could print out and just throw on your fridge. So even though you had the emails as a reminder, there was also just a schedule there to keep you on track.
And that was the motivation for the shopping list too, was having it be potentially not only mobile friendly, but printer friendly as well.
Speaking of mobile friendly,
that was a real good segue.
Andrea, do you want to talk a little about how important this was for you guys?
Yeah, it was funny. This is the first time we've done a product like this, and it was a very collaborative process between the writing and the writer and the design. And so we would sort of write and then kind of see what it felt like on mobile. We didn't want to have the text sections be too long before there was another header or another chart or some other piece of interest that would kind of provide a little levity to the text. And so it was very much a mobile-first experience, or the approach we take to our graphics. If you've seen our graphics, typically the notes are like, quite long in some cases. For these, they're very spare, and we included some conversational annotations to kind of explain what it is that people are seeing in these charts.
How long were these emails? How many words per email?
They were under 800 words.
Was that an intentional?
That was completely intentional, yeah.
How did you kind of land on that number and in that range?
It was really trial by error. I think the first lesson that got written out, like Andrea said, we put it into Figma, which is a really great tool for prototyping, and it's very collaborative as well. So we were able to put in all the text, see what that might look like, and then kind of just cut away at it and say, for us in particular, I think it was a new product, not only in the design and the graphics, but writing style as well. I think we like to think that the Pew Research information is written in an accessible way, but we wanted to take this a step further where it wasn't as bogged down by all the numbers and really could be read, I won't say casually because then the topic is not casual, but a little bit less formally than a report or something like that. So in that, we had this editing process of, okay, maybe we started with 1,000 some words, but then you really start looking and saying, you don't need all of this to understand the topic. And through that, we got to a length that we felt more comfortable with the perceived scroll length, which we, again, used the headers and the short paragraphs and the charts to kind of help with. It probably was longer than we even thought we were going to go for in the originally, but the formatting of it helps it seem a little lighter and a little bit easier to get through.
Yeah. The other thing that's great about it, too, is if you find when you're making these that the emails are too long, maybe it means you need to add an extra day to the series.
Yes.
Especially when they're these, this short, 5, 7, 14 days. Adding an extra day is not a huge deal for readers as long as it's practical, useful, and they're going to get a lot out of it. Mm-hmm. Tanya, I wanted you to talk about the tip that's up there. It's in the bottom right corner, but this was, I thought, such a cool kind of scannable thing that existed in the post emails. How did those come about, those extra little elements?
Yeah, so it started with the first series that we launched, Zero to Dinner Party. But we found that if you want to teach somebody how to cook something in a approachable and conversational recipe, you kind of have to break away for a second. It's like you're breaking the fourth wall, but doing it again. And so the most natural way to do that, both text-wise and then also format-wise, was these tip breakaways. And so it was an easy way to make things both scannable. You might just scan through and get all the tips if you'd like. Or if you're reading the recipe, you're doing something, and if you already know how to do it, you can skip on past it, and we don't have to waste your time with a paragraph about how to cut a mango, which I'm pretty sure that's what that tip is. Use a glass, I swear to God. But we really were able to kind of jump in and out of our own narrative that way. And I think it adds a nice visual break as well.
Absolutely. Something that all of us have played around with, but it's really, really important, is this idea of progress reminders, because these emails are 7, 10, 14, 30 days. Keeping people on track and helping them understand kind of where they are in the user journey and in the process is really important. At BuzzFeed, we just built them into all the headers. Pew, you guys had a really, really cool approach.
Yeah.
Ariana, will you talk about kind of how you came up with this little progress bar?
Yeah, so actually the designer who worked with us, Christy Walker, was really committed to this idea, and I think at first we weren't sure how it was going to work, but then when you see it all together, it really makes sense. But basically, the idea being that you have dots along a timeline, and each lesson or email actually, is one of those, including the welcome and the conclusion. And so that partnered with the text underneath it and some other text throughout, kind of really give you a sense, you're here, this is where you're going, and that helped again with that finite feeling that, oh no, I signed up for this and it's going to take 30 days. No, it's 5 circles, you're on number 1, you only have so much to go. And I think that really helped people get a sense of where they were along the journey.
And we really tried to encourage them along the way. The screenshot that says nice work, you just completed lesson 1, that came at the bottom of every email. So cheerleading is important.
And then everyone did a congratulations email in all of these. How important are those in the process? Tanya, you want to take a crack at that?
I think people, like I said before, really want to come away feeling like they completed something. And so if you're going along with people in this journey and you've made it this like personal connection with your reader, you want to give them a pat on the back when they're done. It also gives you a great avenue for directing them to other content that you might have. So recently at the conclusion of Plant Powered, because we actually didn't do a congratulation for the first two, we did like at the end of the 12th one, there was like a text element that said like, thank you so much for joining us, you did a great job, you've learned so much. And the last email kind of served as that congratulation, but with Plant Powered specifically, we said like, hey, thanks again for sticking with us for 12 weeks. Considering that you did this, you might also be interested in other 12-week formats. Like we'll hang out with you for a couple of months and then we'll leave you alone until you're ready to try something else. And the click rate on the signups for Meal Plan of Action, Zero to Dinner Party, and a new series that we're launching. We gave those readers a heads up that it was coming. It was like very early, we hadn't even announced it yet. And people are really interested in engaging with that because they were able to come away with something positive.
Yeah.
I'll mention too that at BuzzFeed, for some of the longer ones, we would add in congratulatory type notes along the way for something like the 30 days to the couch to 5K. Halfway through, you'd get a note that'd be like, you're doing it. Or like, you're 75% of the way there. Just little positive notes, again, like coaching and encouraging you. And people really do love being congratulated at the end. We always saw that the open rates on that last congratulations email, we'd see a little bit of a spike. Even if maybe they quit halfway through, at the end, they're like, yeah, I made it to the end. I did it. I opened this email. I do deserve to be congratulated. People love being congratulated. Few other notes to mention. I will go back. Oh, come on. We're going to do clicker practice next year before ONA. In terms of community signaling, the Post did an awesome job with this. And Tanya, will you talk a little about how you guys approached building community into these newsletters?
Yeah, so we really wanted to meet readers where they were, not just in their inbox, but outside of it. And for anybody who cooks, you know Instagram is the place to go. You want to show your creations with your friends, your mom, make people proud. So we met people where they were and really encouraged them to interact with us in that space, show us what you're cooking, brag to your friends that you're doing this cool thing, and we would throw them a bone, and every send after week one, we would show people the previous week's creations from that series, what people were cooking on Instagram. And so on the left-hand side, you'll see two people cooking from the chickpeas week. We have like a falafel and a really great like chickpea rice dish. So people felt really excited when they got featured, and we also would send people tote bags, and then people would share their tote bags on Instagram, and they were able to help us spread the word about this product, really kind of like evangelize on our behalf, and that was a really positive experience. And then for Meal Plan of Action, and I know the other couple of authors who've done series for us, we make ourselves extremely available to people, respond to every single email, respond to every single Instagram DM, every question that they have. So we're able to kind of bring the community, you know, back to us to be able to like feed into the questions that they have and what they're interested in finding out. And yeah, it was really fun.
So why respond to everything?
Well, I think part of it is you put both hats on. So a newsletter editor, a lot of times it can be helping enforce the message of what the format is, because not everybody understands what an email series is. So they'll be like, oh, it's done. Where are the other emails? I want to keep doing this. Sometimes it would be a deliverability issue. So we really want to be there to kind of like technically troubleshoot. But then with something like this in the food space, people want to make substitutions. They want to know if they can do this. They want to, sometimes people weren't on Instagram and they would email me and be like, hey, I just wanted to show you my steak. Do you like it? I'd be like, I love your steak so much, thank you. But I think with an email, usually that format is very one-to-one. And so when you're getting a newsletter from a brand or like a marketer, it can feel really impersonal. And so being able to follow up with people and to continue that conversation beyond that 1 week, that 1 week send that they get, I think is really valuable both to them, but also to us, because we get invaluable feedback.
Right. And I think that's part of the whole coach idea as well. You set it up to say that you have a coach. If nobody's answering, you just broke that entirely. So we also made sure that we were responding to people's questions and trying to give them the extra information that they may have had after reading the course.
Is that going to be a bigger part of future Pew courses? The reader engagement and asking questions? And
Yes, I would hope so. I think that that's been a really interesting thing with this course is just the great questions that we've gotten from some of the readers, and we've had new ideas for other, potential courses that we might want to do in the future because of the input that we've gotten.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add is at the end of almost all the series, not necessarily in like a congratulation format, but we give people like a survey to give us feedback, and that, to Andrea's point, really helps us seed new ideas. We asked people like, what else would you like to see from us? A bunch of people were like, can you teach me how to bake? And guess what? We're gonna teach people how to bake. We're doing it.
yeah, making sure you ask something. It can be a quiz, it can be a survey at the end as part of that congratulations email, or even afterwards. Maybe the congratulation email goes out, and then a week later you want to ping them with a note. Don't be, Delta Airlines, JetBlue. United's a sponsor, so United does a great job with this. But don't be one of the airlines that pings you like, we didn't get your feedback on that flight to New Orleans. Can you rate us on it? But just asking them and asking for feedback is a really great way to learn. And beyond just the data you're getting from your email provider, getting that anecdotal data from the readers, whether they're telling you something or telling you in the survey, is an awesome, awesome way to do it.
And so just one more thing.
Yeah.
I think also because these are so topic-based, you're creating an audience that's really invested in that one topic. Maybe they're also becoming more invested in your brand, but particularly that they're interested in that topic. So for the immigration course in particular, every time that we did update the course, we let everyone else know that it was being updated and any new resources that we had that they might be interested in. And we know they care because they finished a course about that topic. So thinking about it in that way as well, like how else can you leverage this now very engaged on one specific theme audience?
I want to make sure we have time for Q&A, so we've got 2 more slides. I did want to mention, though, in terms of promotional posts, what I love about all of these, we got a BuzzFeed, we got a Post, and we got a Pew here. You'll notice the headlines on these promo posts are a little different than most headlines. They're a little more conversational. These work really well on your site. They stand out in a different way. They also really work well in terms of social and within newsletters. We're all happy to talk later, too, about how you promote these. Once you've made them, how do you actually get people into these? Lastly, in terms of targeting folks within the email, there's some great examples here from the Post in terms of how you kind of do a dedicated email to get people to appeal to them and get them to sign up for an additional sort of thing. Tanya, you want to talk about that really, really quick?
Yeah, after we had done a couple of these, we had lists in our system that we knew, to Ariana's point, were dedicated readers interested in a certain topic. And so whenever we were working on something new, we would give them a heads up, and then we can send them a big promotional blast that's like, hey, we definitely know you're interested in this. Target overlap. We can target people who read related content on the site but might be in our database but aren't subscribing to those newsletters. And it gives us an opportunity to let people know what we have to offer, because beyond our newsletter management page, the best way to show people what we're launching is through these blasts and through social. And people can be signing up through a variety of different avenues, and so you can never assume that people are going to see it in one place.
Awesome. And Andrea, in terms of what you guys did, I thought it was so neat how you have all this interesting content on immigration, but then you all of a sudden had a course to direct people to.
Yeah, we looked at all of our most visited content in the sort of immigration vertical, and then we put these little promos for the course on all of those pages across the site. And so even when people were coming in sideways via search, which is a huge source of referrals for us, they were still seeing the course, and it was being promoted there. So it was really very helpful for us.
Awesome. We have about 15 minutes left, so we'd love to answer questions. We have a microphone in the back, yes, and we have some hands over here. Yeah, let's do it.
I have a few questions, so I may come up there a little later, but I'll ask one that I think others might benefit from. The writing process. So obviously it's like batch writing, right? Like you're spending a lot of your hours writing at one time. Do you have any tips or thoughts or anything to share about what the workflow and the process is for writing it, drafting it, getting feedback, and then finalizing it?
Andrea and Ariana, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, I mean, for us, we've done one of these, and we're actually working on a second one right now. And from what we learned with the first one, the second one has gone much easier because we have sort of a good sense of like how long each section should be, and so you can let the writer know, this, you should aim for this word count for these different sections, and that helps. I think keeping in mind that people really want like the big picture, they want like the 10,000 foot view, they don't want all of the nitty gritty, and so I think that was helpful too.
I would just add, we started with an outline too, so that's really important. You're thinking of a course as multiple lessons, so how are you going to break it up? How are you going to make sure that each email has some value? And that really helped us start thinking, okay, so immigration, that's huge, but how many lessons do we actually need for that? And what topic are we going to cover in each one?
Yeah, so we had an outline of each lesson and then sub-bullets on what the topics would be discussed within that lesson.
And as you go through, you can always, once it's launched and out there, you get that reader feedback. You can always add more or cut back depending on what readers are telling you. What else?
Hi,
Yes.
I had a couple quick questions. I was just trying to figure out what sort of A/B testing you had done for this, and if there was anything you could share on that front. And also for anyone who's doing, has like a subscription, or an audience-driven business, how do you drive people into, maybe subscribe or become a member of your organization?
It's a great question. In terms of A/B testing, yeah.
I couldn't hear the first part of the
And
question.
what kind of A/B testing did we do? Or did you do? We
We
looked at
didn't
doing
do it.
A/B testing,
Yeah.
and it is a crazy hairball, so we didn't do it.
Yeah, mostly because of how MailChimp in particular sets up the course itself. In order to do A/B testing, we would have had to duplicate each course very many times, and so in the end, it just wasn't worth it. And the thing we really wanted to test most of all at the beginning was the timing, to be honest. We were fairly confident that the content we had gotten to a good point. So we wanted to do the timing. In the end, we decided instead we would put a survey in the back, and the survey told us that people liked what we did in the first place. So
Yeah, it's almost, you might even want to A/B test the concept in other newsletters than our series format, or
Yeah.
A/B test elements of it, because we use a proprietary email service provider that we built in-house. And the series logic is going to be the biggest roadblock to you. I'm assuming that's the same thing with MailChimp, but everything is connected to the list that got something before, and so if you were to split that on an A/B testing, you're creating a lot of extra work for yourself that you might not want. So I would almost recommend, if there are elements of that that you're wanting to test, if it's like ideas or timing, doing it in other existing products that you have where you can really rely on the feedback that you're going to get from those dedicated readers.
Plus, some of the email service providers, MailChimp, Campaign Monitor, make it fairly easy to change things on the fly. Others, like Sailthrough, if you try to change anything, it just all breaks down. So it really depends on what you're using in advance. I'll mention at the New Yorker, with the classics email I mentioned, we did some testing just on a smaller subset of our list, or really, really engaged users, just as kind of a manual thing first to see what kind of things were working before taking the next step. That was a nice way to try it. So we learned some things before we got in and rolled it out to more people.
And I think, just one last point, I think you asked too about subscriptions and subscribers, and to that point I wanted to say a lot of these products that we're talking about right now, as we've mentioned, are inbox exclusive, and so we're not giving people a ton of opportunities to go back to our site. And so if you think about subscriptions as a funnel, you can think about newsletters as like a tiny funnel within that, and so these products are at the top of the funnel. You're targeting new audiences, you're engaging them in an interesting new level that your other products aren't, and so instead of trying to drive people to your site from there, you want to drive them to other products that might just be links or feeds. So for us, after you complete one or maybe all 3 or 4 of our inbox exclusive series, we might send you to our recipes newsletter, which is a once a week Saturday newsletter, but it's literally just links to recipes. And after you consume 3 of those, you'll hit our paywall, and maybe you had such a great experience with those series recipes that you know we're good for it, and you'll subscribe.
We didn't touch on this in the session, but something that I wanted to mention here is if you have something that works really well and does drive an incredibly high level of engagement, you may want to think about in the long run putting paid spend behind it and using it as a way to onboard readers who are almost basically as an onboarding process for new readers to build habit. Depending on what the course is and what you want to achieve, it could be a thing that's worth testing. What else? Go where the microphone goes.
He's getting a workout.
It's a big room.
So we've been thinking about doing evergreen content at our site, and but in my head, I had always imagined it as like a landing page and like articles like linking to different parts of Evergreen Content, so like these explainer type things. So like a really basic question is like, why should I do email and not the thing I just said? Like, what's special about email?
We talked a lot about that, and there were some folks who really felt strongly like we should, if we're creating all this really great information, we should also be publishing it on our site. And I agree with that my heart agrees with that, but I also worried that if we made it available on our website that people wouldn't subscribe to the experience. And I do feel like the experience of having this content doled out to you every 2 days over a long period of time is totally different than sitting down at your computer and like reading all of it in one go and then sort of forgetting everything. Like, I do think there's a lot of to the retention, the ability for people to like process and remember information, I think is much improved when you're not giving them too much at once. And I think that's a lot of the power of these courses.
And we actually published 2 of our courses online, and then we started to roll that back with future launches, because you're also asking people to do a lot more work than just sending it to them. So you're giving readers an ability to opt into something, and then you have more engaged readers. You are able to build a deeper connection. But also, you know, when you publish anything to the site, it's evergreen and you can re-promote it, but then it kind of just dies off. And the series format, having it be automated, you set it and forget it, and somebody's going to get it at some point for like almost eternity, because people are going to keep signing up for it.
I would also say, I'm not sure I know exactly, what you all are planning, but it's kind of the same situation that we had, where we had many, many pages of content, and it's really about creating that experience by distilling what's in there and making it a story of sorts for people to follow. So it's not just, here are the links to all these things, but instead like, okay, you want to know this thing, and we're going to walk you through step by step so that you can understand it.
Yeah, building habit too is really important, and for so many of us in the room, collecting an email address is one of the first steps to bring someone down the funnel and getting them closer to subscribe or become a member of your site. So if you can use that, something like this, the low lift, 7 days, 5 days, 12 weeks, whatever it is, it's a really good opportunity to get someone a little closer into your world.
Thanks so much. This is great. Got sort of another revenue-oriented question. Did you have conversations about advertising in these series that were different than the advertising that you might run in sort of a regular newsletter that doesn't have sort of a stopping point?
That's all you. We're a nonprofit.
We don't do it's a tough question. For Veraciously, that's a product that the vertical is something that we can sell separately, and so the newsletter can be part of that advertising package. So there are definitely revenue options in there, but in those series, we don't do programmatic ads, so they are an extra level of product that I guess that you could get, but I don't do a ton on the business side, so I don't know that that's a great answer to the question. Dan actually might know better.
It's definitely, at BuzzFeed, we were a little ahead of where the advertising team was at the time. The advertising team expressed a lot of interest in it, but never took the next step. Right now, actually, if you look at the BuzzFeed newsletters, there's some programmatic ads in there. I think there's a ton of opportunity. Even if you launch the product first, prove that it works, and then go back to an advertiser and say, all right, your name a brand. I'm blanking on a brand that would do cleaning. Swiffer. Your Swiffer.
Oh, I was going to say Lexus.
It's the BuzzFeed's 10-day spring cleaning challenge. Like Swiffer, we have this thing. We just signed up 100,000 people. The open rates are 60% across the board. The habit was incredibly high. We have your audience here. How would you like to be a part of this? There's certainly opportunities to prove it in advance too, and then go back to them.
I also just thought of one point, which is if your email is targeted to a demographic that your news site isn't traditionally reaching, then that is a really great selling point. The Veraciously brand as a whole is targeted toward millennial novice cooks, which definitely gave the post a new avenue to reach advertisers that weren't used to working with us.
I think we have time for 2 more.
Hi, thanks so much for this. Quite a basic question in terms of timelines. So, from conception to publishing, how long did it take any of y'all to get this sorted? And in terms of resources, did you have to acquire extra resources from your newsrooms? and how would you go about kind of issues related to sort of additional workflows for journalists on this?
Yeah, I'll speak for Pew Research. It took us about
10 months.
Yeah, 9-10 months, but that is because the second part of your question, we did not acquire any new resources. It was kind of in your 10% time project for a writer/researcher, Andrea,
Designer.
myself, a designer, and a communications person. So we formed a team, but it was nobody's primary project, and so that's kind of why it dragged out as long as it did. And also because it was new, people didn't know what it was. We were figuring things out. We were building templates. We were figuring out how this was going to look and how it was going to work. As we go into the next ones, it's going a lot quicker because all of that's already been done, and it's more focused on actually writing the content in a way that works for what we've already created.
I also think it's totally contingent on the format. If yours is really to drive readers back to evergreen content that you don't have to rework too much or you don't have to create entirely, and you have a base template, you really don't have too much work ahead of you. At least for our cooking series, we actually created the content for these series, so it wasn't a use of Evergreen, although we did have some stuff that we would link back to if we had tips or guides for existing things that we referenced in the newsletter. But for us, it's usually around a 3-month run-up. So for Meal Plan of Action, I think we started in like June or July with outlines and drafts, and we launched in September of last year. So it really depends. We didn't have additional resources, though, for other series, since I was in-house. For the authoring part of Zero to Dinner Party, the new one we're launching, Baking Basics, and Plant Powered, those were all freelancers. So we support all of the newsletter side, back-end newsletters, social promotion, design, all of that is in the post with existing resources, but then food kicks over freelance budget for the authoring portion.
The New Yorker ones were, because it was evergreen content, the hardest part was just getting an editor to write something, like write a 150-word intro. For some of the BuzzFeed, Button Core, there was a lot of work because they were shooting, there was writing. Those were really involved processes that took a couple of months. Last one. Make it good.
I noticed that when you talk about what's in it for publishers, revenue isn't on your list. Do you see these as a viable revenue source in terms of having them be paid courses, or do you feel that that is just not something that people would pay for?
Oh, in terms of someone paying to get
take
access
the course.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, something that I'll mention is if you look not at the publisher space, but at a lot of smaller bloggers and there are a lot of folks out there on the web in general who are using stuff like this, but as paid courses. Yeah, it's there's a couple great examples that I can think of get 30 days of content to help you improve how you use Google Sheets or to get smarter about using video. There's even ones built around, how to get better at email that you can sign up and pay for. Pay $150 and you get access to that kind of course. There's certainly opportunities there if you wanted to go that route.
I think it's hard too if you already have a beefed out newsletter portfolio where you're offering free content. You have to really differentiate how that product serves people and is worth the extra money. I mean, we've definitely thought about paid levels of things, I think. But at the end of the day, we come back to the fact that, we, on our site alone, give people 3 free opportunities to do this. How can we just ask people out from the jump to pay for something if they're new to the post and they're not even familiar with our content? How can you really get people into it without giving them a taste? Which I actually think these series help do for other content that is paywalled.
A couple of resources. We made these slides available to all. So you can download the slides at these bit.lys. We put together, and when I say we, I mean the 3 panelists here did, frankly, an amazing job putting together these best practice guides with tips. You have them already on your chairs already. It's awesome, and please take advantage of those. And we put together a kind of a strategy positioning doc to ask some questions as you're going through and trying to launch your own. A couple other things I'll mention. Pew has, did it disappear off the page?
It disappeared.
Oh, no, it was
no.
No, it was just,
It's not there.
The URL. It's
All right,
okay.
you can't sign up for the Pew course. It's gone forever.
If you Google it, you'll find it.
Yeah, definitely.
The Pew, the Post has many, and I'll also, not a newsletter, I will share all of these in the next edition, which goes out on Monday. So if you sign up for that, everything in here will be in there as well. Afterwards, if you want to come talk to us, we'll be up here. The Pew team will be at their booth
yeah.
afterwards. What
So,
booth number is it?
So booth 508 and Pew Research Center booth, I will be there from 4 to 5:30 today, and then Friday I'll also be there from 2:30 to 3:30 if anyone wants to chat.
Come find them afterwards. And for anyone who is here and wants to have a beer afterwards, the official Not a Newsletter happy hour is at 5 o'clock tonight, 5 to 7. Notahappyhour.com. All the details are there. Come out, say hi, have a beer. Thanks so much, guys.
Is my mic off? No, it's not, still on.